Today, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle are blackmailing the dying king over access to his two grandchildren, and they're not even trying to hide it anymore.
April 1st, 2026. They say April 1st is a day for fools, but at Buckingham Palace, the mood is far from light-hearted. The golden bridge that King Charles III reportedly extended to his youngest son for a private summit at Balmoral on April 20th has not just been walked over, it has been rigged with administrative explosives. Today we can reveal the true nature of the negotiations that took place behind closed doors throughout March 2026. What was meant to be a grandfather's simple wish to see his grandchildren, Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet, has been transformed by Meghan Markle and Prince Harry into a high-stakes commercial and legal shakedown. The term is not ours. It first surfaced in the high society columns of The Sun and The Times earlier this year. But following Harry's crushing legal defeat in late March 2026, the rhetoric has sharpened. Having lost his final appeal against the Home Office raid to regain automatic taxpayer fund-fueled police protection, Harry has pivoted. Insiders confirm that the Monarchy machine has issued a chilling ultimatum. No security, no grandchildren. Through sources close to the couple and strategic leaks to the Sunday Times, the narrative has been set. Harry claims he hopes to receive an invitation to Sandringham or Balmoral, but in the same breath, he asserts that it is impossible to bring his family to British soil without a full diplomatic-grade security detail. To the palace, this isn't about safety. It's a strategic manoeuvre to force the king to override the British government, a move that would trigger a constitutional crisis. A senior palace source speaking to Daily Mail described the king's reaction as one of profound emotional distress. The king views this not as a safety concern, but as a calculated threat. Charles, currently navigating his own health battles, sees his grandchildren being used as human shields in a war over status. While the public was focused on the security dispute, a much more sinister document was being exchanged between lawyers. Meghan Markle, through a high-powered legal team in Los Angeles, has reportedly submitted a 15-page list of conditions that must be met before Archie and Lilibet even board a plane. This document, described by royal aides as outrageous and delusional, outlines a series of demands that go far beyond basic travel arrangements. It is a blueprint for a commercial invasion. Perhaps the most audacious demand involves the children's travel documents. Meghan has reportedly insisted that Archie and Lilibet's British passports be amended to feature the titles Prince and Princess in a more prominent, diplomatically significant manner. Critics argue this is a move to secure intellectual property by having these titles officially stamped in a specific commercial-friendly format. The Sussexes would have a legal shield to market the children as global royal influencers for their upcoming lifestyle brands. In what many are calling the financial shakedown, Meghan is demanding the king establish a trust fund of £20 million for Archie and Lilibet. The justification is framed as compensation for the children being deprived of their royal birthright, their heritage, and the security of the institution they were forced to flee. Meghan has reportedly stated she does not trust the British medical or educational systems, which she views as rigid and archaic. As a condition for the April 20th visit, she demands the Royal Family Fund, a private team of US-based pediatricians, psychologists, and educational consultants, to travel with the family and remain on site at Balmoral. Behind these demands lies a deeply ingrained psychological strategy. Harry and Meghan have built a comprehensive blame system where the king and the institution are the architects of every setback the couple has faced since 2020. Meghan argues that Archie and Lilibet are isolated not because of Meghan, but because the palace created a toxic and racist environment that made them refugees in America. Even Meghan's estrangement from her father, Thomas Markle, is now being laid at the feet of the palace. She claims the institution failed to train or protect him from the media, leading to the collapse of their relationship. When Spotify dropped their podcast or Netflix project stalled, the Sussex narrative shifted to shadow sabotage. They claim the palace machine actively worked to smear their reputation in Hollywood, causing their commercial misfortunes. While the king leads with his heart, Princess Anne has emerged as the strategist of the zero-tolerance policy. In meetings held just before the March 31st deadline, Anne reportedly stood firm against any concessions. Anne's stance is clear. The monarchy is a covenant of service, not a branding asset for a California startup. She has characterized the demands as an affront to the Constitution. Anne has reportedly told the king that reinstating lost privileges or funding private US medical teams would be a violation of the very decree that stripped them of their working royal status in the first place. There will be no bowing to blackmail. A source close to the Princess Royal stated Archie and Lilibet are loved, but they are not bargaining chips for a security deal. As of today, April 1st, 2026, we can confirm that while there have been efforts to arrange a private summit at Balmoral, no time or location has been confirmed. The king has reportedly rejected the demand for the HR status on the children's passports, a move that Meghan views as a personal attack. Meghan's legal team continues to push the narrative that without the HR titles and official security, the children are second-class royals and vulnerable to the press. This is the California Wall, a fortress of demands built to ensure that if the king says no, Meghan can once again play the victim on a global stage. The gold mine of royal drama is being mined for every ounce of leverage. But as Princess Anne warned, the waking nightmare of Montecito is meeting the Iron Lady of London. The boy who was once the cheeky prince is now a man caught in a 15-page trap. The 15-page manifesto submitted by Meghan Markle's legal team has sent shockwaves through the highest echelons of the British establishment, the Commercial Passport Amendment, and the resulting explosion of fury from the Prince of Wales. At the heart of the Sussexes' latest demands is a granular, legally coded insistence regarding Prince Archie and Princess Liette's British travel documents. Sources close to the Home Office have leaked that Meghan Markle is not merely asking for titles to be recognised. She is demanding that the designations Prince and Princess be moved to the primary identification fields of their passports, accompanied by an official diplomatic priority endorsement. To the layperson, this sounds like vanity. To Prince William, it is a declaration of war. Royal aides whisper that William viewed this specific demand as a Trojan horse for commercial expansion. By securing these titles in a high-status diplomatic format, the Sussexes would effectively have a government-stamped brand. This would allow them to bypass standard commercial regulations in the US and Asia, marketing their children as official royal entities for their upcoming lifestyle ventures and documentary sequels. It is an attempt to patent the monarchy. A source close to the Prince of Wales remarked, William sees this as a blatant violation of the Sandringham Agreement. You cannot be half in, half out when it comes to using the Crown's sovereignty to sell organic jams or Netflix specials. The Sussex legal team has reportedly framed this demand as a safety and identity issue. Their logic is steeped in the familiar language of trauma and exclusion. They argue that by denying the children prominent title recognition on their passports, the palace is effectively erasing their identity and making them vulnerable to airport security risks. Meghan's lawyers have gone as far as to suggest that the King's refusal to grant HR Her Royal Highness status on these documents is a form of institutional bullying. They claim that the lack of these three letters makes the children second as citizens within their own family. This is the crux of their victimhood doctrine. Every refusal by the King is repackaged as an act of aggression against two innocent children. While King Charles struggles with the emotional weight of being separated from his grandchildren, Prince William has reportedly moved toward a zero-contact stance. Insiders suggest that William has privately told the King that any summit on April 20th that includes American mediators or mediated lawyers is a non-starter. William's fury stems from a deep-seated belief that Harry is no longer acting of his own volition, but as a hostage to a 5-page script. The Prince of Wales is particularly incensed by the demand for a £20 million compensation trust. He reportedly views this as an insult to the British taxpayer and a shameful ransom for a family visit. The proposed summit of reconciliation for April 20th is now hanging by a thread. While the King remains desperate for a breakthrough, the Iron Lady, Princess Anne, and the future King William have formed a united front. They have made it clear the King may provide a cup of tea and a walk in the gardens, but he will not provide a commercial license for the Sussex brand. As of this afternoon, the palace has confirmed that the HR status remains revoked. The 15-page trap has been set, but the gates of Windsor remain firmly bolted against the commercial royals. As the high-stakes chess match between Montecito and Buckingham Palace intensifies, a new and staggering figure has emerged from the leaked 15-page manifesto. It is a number that has left veteran courtiers breathless and the British public in a state of disbelief: 20 million. This is not a budget for a new documentary or a security contract. According to high-level sources within the Duke of Lancaster, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry have formally requested the King establish a misfortune and compensation trust fund of £20 million for Prince Archie and Princess Liette. To the outside world, this is a family dispute. To the Sussex legal team, it is a settlement. The logic presented in the manifesto is as audacious as it is psychologically complex. Meghan argues that because the children were deprived of their royal environment, their security, and their natural peer group within the British aristocracy, they have suffered a quantifiable loss of status and future earnings. The 20 million is framed not as a gift, but as back pay for birthright. Prince William is reportedly incandescent with rage over this specific demand. Insiders suggest he has characterized it as a grandchild ransom. The implication is clear. If the King wants to play the role of a doing grandfather on April 20th at Balmoral, he must first sign a cheque that acknowledges the trauma his institution inflicted on the Sussex offspring. Part 3 of our investigation delves into the psychological machinery behind this demand. Harry and Meghan have perfected what psychologists call systemic scapegoating. In their worldview, every failure, from the cancellation of Meghan's Pearl series to the lukewarm reception of Harry's latest Polo documentary, is the direct result of institutional sabotage by the palace machine. When their multi-million-dollar deal with Spotify collapsed, the Sussexes didn't point to a lack of content. Instead, they alleged that negative briefings from palace aides turned advertisers against them. Meghan's legal team has used the word refugee to describe the children's status in California. By claiming they were forced to flee a racist and toxic environment, they create a legal pretext for compensation. In Meghan's eyes, the King isn't just a father, He is the CEO of a corporation that wrongfully terminated their benefits. Meghan has reportedly described the king's refusal to fund a private US-based medical and psychological follow for the trip as stingy and controlling. The demand for a two-strong team of American pediatricians and educational trauma consultants to accompany the children to Balmoral is seen by the palace as a strategic insult. It implies that the king's own physicians, some of the finest in the world, are unsafe or untrustworthy. By insisting on an American security and health bubble, Meghan is effectively saying that British soil remains a crime scene for her family. While the king is reportedly heartbroken and tempted to find a middle ground to see his grandchildren, Princess Anne has stepped in as the financial firewall. Anne has reminded the king that the royal family's wealth is not a private ATM for non-working members living abroad. She has pointed out that the 15-page manifesto is a direct violation of the 2020 Sandringham Agreement, which prohibited the commercialization of the monarchy. Anne sees this as a protection racket, says a source close to the Princess Royal. She has made it clear that if the king pays a single penny into this compensation trust, it will be seen as an admission of guilt. It would validate the narrative that the monarchy is racist and toxic. Anne will not let that happen. Perhaps most linked to the royal household is the demand that every chef, maid and valet at Balmoral sign a Sussex-authored non-disclosure agreement. Meghan's lawyers claim this is to protect the children's mental health from leaks. However, the palace sees it as a gag order intended to prevent the world from seeing the reality of the visit. It is an attempt to ensure that the only narrative that leaves Balmoral is the one curated by the Sussexes for their future media projects. Meghan wants absolute image control, demanding that only her hand-picked photographers capture the reunion. As of this afternoon, April 1st, the king has reportedly sent a formal response through his own legal counsel. The message is simple: the king's love is unconditional, but his treasury is not. The 20 million demand has been rejected out of hand. The king has reiterated that Archie and Lilibet are welcome as beloved family members, but they will not be treated as commercial assets or litigation exhibits. The April 20th summit is now looking less like a reconciliation and more like a legal standoff. Meghan's team has countered by suggesting that without the trust fund and the NDA protection, the children's safety cannot be guaranteed. The emotional hostage strategy is in full effect. As the calendar turns to April, the battle of the documents has reached a fever pitch. While the public remains focused on the £20 million trust fund, a more insidious conflict is simmering within the Home Office and the private chambers of Queen Camilla. At the centre of this storm is the Sussexes' demand for diplomatic title entrenchment on the British passports of Prince Archie and Princess Lilibet. The 15-page manifesto contains a highly specific legal demand regarding the children's travel documents. Meghan Markle, through her California-based legal consultants, has insisted that the titles Prince and Princess be printed not merely as observations in the official notes section, but as a primary component of the children's legal names in the machine-readable zone of their British passports. Furthermore, they have demanded the inclusion of an official diplomatic endorsement, a status usually reserved for working royals on state business. To the British government rave, this is a logistical nightmare. To the royal family, it is a transparent power play. By securing a diplomatic passport status, the Sussexes would effectively bypass the very security rulings Harry just lost in court. A diplomatic passport carries inherent international protections and privileges that would force the UK and US governments to provide a level of automatic security that Harry's private lawsuit failed to achieve. It's a backdoor manoeuvre. A source within the Home Office revealed they are trying to use the children's identity to circumvent the High Court's ruling if the children are diplomatic entities. The taxpayer is on the hook for their protection regardless of their non-working status. While King Charles III has attempted to maintain a fatherly diplomacy, Queen Camilla has reportedly reached her breaking point. Known for her keep calm and carry on mantra, the Queen Consort has seen the toll this emotional blackmail has taken on her husband's health during his cancer recovery. Sources close to the Queen indicate she has characterized the demands as predatory and cruel. Camilla is particularly incensed by the Sussexes' victimhood narrative, which frames the king as a neglectful grandfather for refusing to grant these diplomatic perks. Camilla has been the king's rock, says a close family friend. She sees through the 15-page trap. She knows that if the king gives in on the passports or the titles, it won't stop there. It will be a new documentary, a new book, a new truth to be sold. She has told the king that Archie and Lilibet are the innocent victims of their parents' ambition, not the palace's protocols. Camilla's influence is seen in the king's recent firm hand policy. She has reportedly encouraged the king to stay focused on his duties and not let the Montecito drama dictate his clinical recovery schedule. The core of the 15-page manifesto is the restoration of the HR, Her Royal Highness style. Though Archie and Lilibet are legally prince and princess, the king has pointedly withheld the HR designation. The Sussexes view this as a security risk and an identity eraser. In their leaked communications, Meghan argues that without the HR prefix, her children are second-class royals, making them easy targets for both physical threats and media intrusion. However, the palace's counter-argument is rooted in constitutional law. The HR title is a style of the sovereign granted to those who represent the crown in an official capacity. To grant it to children living permanently in a foreign republic who do not serve the British people would be a constitutional absurdity. The American phalanx versus the palace physicians, the manifesto's demand for a private US-based medical team to accompany the children to Balmoral, has been interpreted by the royal household as a direct insult to the King's own medical staff. Meghan's legal team has suggested that the stress and trauma of the royal environment requires specialized American educational and trauma consultants who understand the unique psychological needs of children raised in California. It is a slap in the face, a palace aide remarked. They are suggesting that the King's home is so toxic that children need a phalanx of therapists just to have lunch with their grandfather. It's not about health. It's about control and narrative building. If they bring their own experts, they control the psychological report that will inevitably be leaked to the press later. Meghan continues to frame her demands as a quest for justice for the disinherited. In her leaked letters, she writes, "We are not asking for a crown. We are asking for a shield that was cries stripped away by an institution that values tradition over the safety of its own blood." This is the emotional hostage strategy at its most potent. By equating titles and diplomatic passports with safety, she makes any refusal by the King look like an act of child endangerment. As of the morning of April 1st, 2026, the Dispatch Wire reports that King Charles III has officially rejected the demand for the HR titles and the diplomatic passport amendments. The King has reportedly stated that while he yearns to see his grandchildren, the decree and constitution of the monarchy are not up for negotiation. The April 20th summit is now in jeopardy. Meghan has reportedly told Harry that they cannot in good conscience put the children at risk by bringing them to a country that refuses to recognize their full diplomatic status. The 15-page trap has snapped shut, but the King, supported by the Iron Guard of Anne, William and Camilla, refuses to be the fool. As the 15-page manifesto continues to circulate within the high-security networks of the royal household, a new flashpoint has emerged that threatens to end the April 20th Balmoral summit before it even begins. It is a demand that has been labelled by palace aides as the ultimate insult to the Crown Service, the Sussex-authored non-disclosure agreement, NDA. Meghan Markle, through her high-powered Hollywood legal team, has reportedly demanded that every single member of the King's personal staff, from the executive chefs to the Highland Gillies, and even the King's private physicians, sign a specialised NDA. This document is not the standard Official Secrets Act that all royal employees already adhere to. Instead, it is a restrictive California-style contract that would grant Meghan and Harry absolute image and narrative control over the children's visit. The legal language is chilling. It prohibits staff from discussing not just the children's words or actions, but their emotional state or reactions to the royal environment, to the palace. This is a gag order designed to ensure that the only version of the reunion that the world ever sees is the one curated for a future Sussex media project. They want to treat Balmoral like a film set. A senior courtier remarked, Meghan is demanding that only her hand-picked photographers be allowed near the children. She wants the copyright to the King's private moments as a grandfather so she can sell them back to the highest bidder. In response to the King's refusal to fund the £20 million trust or the American medical phalanx, a subtle but lethal smear campaign has begun to leak from sources close to the Sussex. The narrative being pushed is one of a stingy king, a monarch who spends millions on a coronation and palace renovations, but refuses to provide the basic safety for his own grandchildren. Meghan's legal team has reportedly characterized the King's request for monthly welfare and educational reports on the children as a controlling and archaic demand. They argue that the King is disrespecting her motherhood by questioning her parenting choices while simultaneously refusing to pay for the children's royal-grade security. The Sussexes continue to frame their demands as a quest for justice for the disinherited. In their view, every no from the King is another brick in the wall of their refugee status. They are playing a dangerous game of emotional hostage, suggesting that the King's stinginess is the only thing keeping Archie and Lilibet from their heritage. However, the Iron Guard, led by Princess Anne, has remained unmoved. Anne has reportedly told the King that signing the Sussex NDA would be an act of institutional surrender. She argues that the King's staff are loyal servants of the Crown, not extras, in a Montecito reality show. As of this afternoon, the King's legal counsel has sent a final response regarding the NDAs. The King will not allow his staff to sign private contracts with non-working members of the family. The 15-page trap has failed to catch the King, but it has succeeded in creating a misfortune that may be irreparable. Meghan has reportedly told her advisors that if the stingy King won't provide the shield of security and the silence of NDAs, then the children remain unsafe in Britain. The April 20th summit is now a ghost of hope, As the clocks across the United Kingdom struck noon on this first day of April, the high-stakes game of royal chicken between the King and the Duke and Duchess of Sussex reached its inevitable crashing conclusion. What began as a 15-page manifesto of demands has ended in a constitutional deadlock that may have severed the Sussexes' ties to the British monarchy for a generation. The April 20th summit at Balmoral, once whispered as the Great Reconciliation, is now being described by palace aides as a deceased project. The collapse of these negotiations marks the ultimate failure of the Sussex extortion strategy as the iron guard of the royal family, Anne, William, and Camilla, successfully fortified the King's resolve against a barrage of emotional and financial demands. The final blow to Meghan Markle's 15-page trap came in the early hours of March 31st. Sources within the Privy Council confirmed that Princess Anne played a decisive role in drafting the King's final response. The message delivered to the Sussex legal team was not a counteroffer. It was a decree of finality. The King has reportedly rejected every single one of the outrageous conditions. The King reminded Harry that the royal family's wealth is held in stewardship for the nation, not as a settlement fund for imaginary traumas. The Home Office has officially ruled that titles like Prince and Princess cannot be used as commercial branding tools or diplomatic shortcuts to bypass the Ray security rulings. The palace has refused to allow its staff to sign private gag orders, affirming that the King's household serves the Crown, not the narrative-building needs of a California media company. The King has spoken. A source close to the Princess Royal stated he has chosen the integrity of the monarchy over the convenience of a family reunion. He will not be the first king in history to be held to ransom by his own son. Throughout this ordeal, Meghan Markle has leaned heavily on her victimhood doctrine. In her final round of leaked communications, she framed the King's refusal as an act of institutional cruelty. She argued that by denying the children the shield of HRH titles and the Boy Thwang compensation for their lost heritage, the King is effectively orphaning them from their history. However, this rhetoric has finally hit a wall of public and internal indifference. The emotional hostage strategy using Archie and Lilibet as bargaining chips has backfired. Even the most sympathetic royal commentators have noted that the stingy King smear campaign failed to gain traction. Instead, the public sees a grandfather undergoing cancer treatment being harassed by a 5-page list of grievances. The definitive no regarding the HR, Her Royal Highness status on the children's passports was the breaking point for Meghan. For her, those 3 letters were not just titles. They were the golden key to diplomatic immunity and global status. The Dispatch Wire reports that Meghan views the King's refusal as a personal insult and a security risk. She has reportedly told her advisors that bringing the children to the UK as second-class royals is a risk she is not willing to take. This is the ultimate security contract that she failed to sign. By making the visit conditional on these impossible demands, she has ensured that if the visit doesn't happen, she can blame the stingy King for being unwelcoming. Perhaps the most significant outcome of this crisis is the solidified alliance between Prince William and Princess Anne. Together they have formed an iron guard around the King, ensuring that his fatherly heart did not compromise the decree and constitution. William's zero-contact policy remains in place. He has reportedly told the King that any future attempt by Harry to extort the family using the children will be met with a permanent removal of their remaining titles. The message is clear. The monarchy is not a goldmine to be exploited. It is a sacred duty. As of April 1st, 2026, the Sussexes find themselves in a precarious position. Their 5-page manifesto has been exposed. Their security blackmail has been defeated in court, and their compensation trust has been laughed out of the palace. The April 20th summit is effectively dead. Harry and Meghan are now refugees, not of a toxic institution, but of their own making. They have traded a grandfather's love for a legal battle, and in doing so, they have lost both. The stingy King remains the King of the United Kingdom, while the commercial royals of Montecito are left with nothing but a 5-page document and a collapsing brand. The Iron Lady of London and the future King have won this round, and the gates of Windsor remain firmly closed to those who would use children as betting chips in a game of greed. The royal family has sent a clear message to the world. The crown is not for sale. No amount of emotional manipulation, legal maneuvering, or media smearing will change the fundamental laws of the institution. Archie and Lilibet remain beloved grandchildren, but they will never be used to dismantle the British Constitution. As the sun sets on this April Fool's Day, the only fools are those who thought they could outmaneuver a 1,000-year-old monarchy with a 5-page script from Hollywood.